Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Todd, for the introduction. So, Hannah, it's great to be here talking about a topic that I'm sure is top of mind for many in our audience, performance creative. Now, before we dive into the questions, I want to ask you to give a little bit of introduction about what you do at WayFair, what is performance creative, and how your team fits into the rest of the organization.
Yeah, so in terms of performance creative, for those of you that don't know, it's essentially the intersection of creative and performance marketing. So it's all about developing data-backed creative that you continue to iterate and learn upon in order to hit your goals or business ROI. And where that kind of fit in the wider Wayfair ecosystem was that we kind of just had one or the other. So we have a really strong performance marketing team and a really great creative studio, but there wasn't a department that was speaking to both of those teams in order to develop that type of creative. So I came in a little over a year ago and built that department from scratch.
Wow, so just in a year, and now you've taken that team from a small tiger team to a department that's continually producing thousands of assets across more than 10 channels. How has AI, which we know has a big part in this, how has that fundamentally changed your team's operational velocity, as well as what does a workflow look like to help support production at that level of volume?
Yeah, so AI hasn't only changed the way in which we work, but it's also changed what we're producing. So I would say there used to be a mindset really over-focusing on bespoke creative assets that, of course, take a lot of team resources. And now we've really shifted that mindset towards modularity. So what are modular-based assets where you can easily swap out elements in order to not only hit that scale, but also continue to customize and personalize based off the audiences that you want to reach. In terms of tactically how we do that, we really focus on a 80-20 rule. So 80% of the assets we're producing are really what we call our tried and true formats, where we know we can rely on those assets to hit, strong performance. And then that 20% is really our playground. And that's where we lean into more bespoke or trying to find those new winners or lean into something fun like surreal Gen AI.
Now, we know that there's so much hype around Gen AI, and in practice, you've mentioned this 80-20 rule. So I imagine some things can scale really well and other things might add more friction to the process. So based on your experience, where are some real-world examples of where you've seen creative elements with AI be a big win versus where you're finding that in your experience it's not yet working as well or it's not as ideal as you'd like it to be?
Well, I'm a big believer, and if you're talking about creative, you should show it. So I have a visual here. Let's see how it does. Oh. All right, so what I always like to say, and what we've noticed in our testing with AI, is that in the lower funnel, so our conversion-based campaign, speaking primarily to paid social here, we see invisible AI working better. So really focusing on one-to-one product accuracy. And then as we move up into the mid and lower funnel, this is where you're trying to stop the scroll. You're trying to capture audience interest and awareness for a larger campaign. So you'll see a lot of like holiday or Halloween assets here. So that's where we tend to go more into the visible version of AI. And on the flip side of that, in terms of what we have seen not perform as well, when we were first doing a lot of Gen AI testing, we were mainly leaning into inspirational imagery, so like what you would see on Pinterest. But we found that because those weren't one-to-one with real products, the customers weren't resonating with it. So now our mantra is that AI should be it should be enhancing our reality, not replacing it, but it can build the world around the product.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to AI and what consumers are seeing, you really want to maintain that trust. And especially with products, they want to know that what they're getting is exactly what they're seeing with the product. But in terms of its placement or the more fun, surrealist aspects, you have a little more room to play around. Now, as you're moving into using more AI and scaling it, I imagine that maintaining brand integrity at a high volume is a constant source of tension. So I want to ask, how are you handling those quality issues that can come with AI? And do you have a framework for deciding whether a deliverable should be AI first versus human first when you're designing, so that you ensure that you maintain that integrity for the brand and you're designing for the brand and the customer rather than the algorithms and the bots?
Yeah, so I always like to say this answer kind of can and should be different based off your company, but what I do always recommend is that you should really focus on building what is your AI compass. So when should you do something AI first versus human first? And I would say at Wayfair, our channels that, again, are very high scale, where we're producing a lot, like a paid social, for example, that's where we're leaning more into Gen AI, versus if you're doing like a, broadcast TV spot, we still find that human storytelling is so key. So that's kind of the differentiation there. However, what I will say is it's important to not let perfection be your enemy of speed and testing. So you should expect there to be some, challenges or unexpected things as you're experimenting with Gen AI, but don't let that stop you, because you don't want to fall behind from all your competitors, right, that are already using that and finding what does work.
So you want to continue to see the experimentation taking place rather than holding back because of those concerns. Now, as we see, we've heard that performance creative now drives a majority of spend in some of the key channels for Wayfair. So that kind of proves that performance creative is a powerful growth lever. So for brand leaders in the room here who might be starting from zero or still in the very early and experimental stages, what's one framework that they could take back to their teams to create some of these more personalized and on-brand types of content that will really resonate with customers?
Yeah, if I was starting from zero today, tomorrow, Monday, etc., I would actually say to pause what you're doing on the production side and instead really focus in on building out your creative flywheel. And there's a lot of steps or versions you'll see of the performance creative flywheel, but I'll kind of break it down into what I'll call the 3 easy A's. So that would go down to your architecture, your audience, and then analysis. So within architecture, this goes back into what I was saying on focusing on how can you build a modular library of top performing assets to where Gen AI can plug in, whether it's for the production piece or even the post for all the versioning of it. And then going into audience, how can you understand, right imagery, right message? We do a lot of either real or synthetic persona testing. So that way your creative strategy and direction already kind of has data behind it before you even put $1 of media spend behind an asset. And then lastly, with analysis, this is, arguably one of the most important steps is really tightening your data loop so that you're getting feedback every time you're launching assets. So you're not just in a cycle of, I launch and move on to the next thing. You want to know what works and why. That way you're actually updating those modular assets and creating that bank that you can really rely on. And so at the end of the day, that's where I always say in performance creative, I feel that I have, the heart of a designer, but a mind of a growth marketer, because it truly is that balance of science and art. But at the end of the day, if you build a company in an environment that really respects both craft and data, you'll see that creative is the most powerful lever for growth in your organization.
Right, and it really matters for the brand and the customer and for your work as well. Anything else you want to add about what brands should be looking to do and how they should approach this as they're starting out?
I would say just start, right? Like whether it's Gen AI for statics, or we've been having a lot of fun, as you saw, with video creative. I feel like that's been a really fun space for me to play in. And then also there's so many great tools for the like audience analysis research, as I was mentioning. So persona tools, whether it's synthetic AI or real. So yeah, just get out there. There's so many tools now. Just try it out and see if it works for your organization.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you so much. Come find me if you want to chat PC.